Welcome to the Stop Suffering in Silence podcast with your host, Denise Walsh and Rachel Timothy.
Hey, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. My name is Denise Walsh. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm here with co-host Rachel Timothy. And today we have three amazing guests on the line with us who all wrote a chapter in the trauma survivor collaboration book through Stop Suffering in Silence. As you may or may not know, we had 10 very courageous survivors share their story for the first time in our compilation book, and they're here to share a bit of their story and what writing was like for them. Now, if you watched our episode 2 weeks ago, you saw we interviewed a few of the authors, but this was before anybody had actually seen the book, including ourselves. We hadn't gotten the physical copy yet. People hadn't started reading yet. So this is a really special conversation because not only is their story out into the world, but they've had a chance to see it in physical form, and so have their friends and family. So Rachel, let's start with you. I'd love to share or hear a little bit about your experience getting the book in your hands.
It was surreal. I mean, you and I talked about it a year ago, and not really knowing, how the girls would react with it. And it was just an absolute amazing, I think it was a healing experience in the process of everybody writing it. And then finally getting it in your hands and being able to see the finished product. It felt amazing. So it was exciting too. We had an event this last weekend and getting to see, it in people's hands. And then we had, several of our survivors there. I got to take a picture of one of our survivors literally autographing the book. And it was just so stinking cute. So pretty cool stuff.
I've written before, right? And I know you have your own book, Rachel, that's out. And there's a sense of vulnerability when you put your heart on a platter like this and then say, okay, world, be nice. And so I can imagine that every new author within this book had that similar fear of like, all right, here's my heart, here's my story, here's my most vulnerable pieces. And the prayer and hope, right, is that there's validation and strength that comes from sharing their story. And we saw that this weekend. We saw so much support surrounding the survivors that they wanted to not only purchase the book and read the book to honor and respect the survivors who showed their stories, but also so they could learn, they could have opened eyes, and they could really, truly understand what the whole grooming process, all the things is about. They wanted to learn too.
Yeah, they sure did. And I think I was looking online and there's, almost 200 sold already and a lot of amazing feedback. And, some people, they read a chapter at a time and let it sink in. And some people read it straight through because, it's just so impactful. But it's definitely a must read in my opinion because, and I know the girls too. So that makes it even more special, but even still, it's an important read.
Absolutely. So if you've gotten the book from Amazon, we want to say thank you. And we ask that you go back and leave a review. Those reviews, those third-party credibility, like you sharing your experience while reading the book is really helpful for people that don't know us or don't know the survivors and are interested and curious in what this is all about. So let's hear from the authors themselves. First, we'll start with Kelly. First of all, I'd love to say congratulations. You are an author now. You can put that in your bio, right? But I'd love to hear a bit about why you decided to be a part of this experience.
Well, a big part of why I said yes is because of you two and the other ladies that I had met in the programs. I don't know. I guess I've always said I need to write a book. And this is I wanted to be able to have other trauma survivors have something that they can look at and say, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not messed up. There's nothing wrong with me. Like that it's everyone has their own stuff and everyone needs support. And I guess I was just hoping that it would be a support for, even if it's a small handful of people, then it's worth it. And part of it was for myself also, because I've never been I've never lied about this part of my life, but I've also never been super open with it. I trusted very few people with the information, and in very small doses. And unfortunately, those people would, they took advantage of that more often than not. So I'd never told anyone the full story before writing this. So it was kind of my way to be vulnerable and hopefully help people, but also to take back the power that had been taken away from me by people using my trauma to hurt me.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because a lot of trauma survivors get hurt. It's not so much the trauma, it's the people around them and how they react to it that really, really hurts. So
yeah, it's like trauma upon trauma, because if you are vulnerable and then get shut down again and again, you learn to stuff, right? Which is where the negative coping skills come. And it's just this huge cycle. So this was a way for you to speak your truth,
yeah,
and be vulnerable and honest without having to tell everyone
right.
your story. You now can just say, go read it.
Go read
Yeah. Awesome. CJ, let's hear from you. Tell us a little bit about why, because you actually, so Kelly and Faith were a part of our programs. And so they've gotten to like, know, and trust us. They've been a part of 90-day U-turn and reflecting ownership, and hopefully the retreat we're doing next. And so they were kind of in the community. Now, CJ, you haven't done any of our programs, but you heard what we were doing and you immediately said, I'm in, tell me more. And so I'd love to hear a bit about why you raised your hand and said you wanted to be a part of this.
Well, first off, it's been an honor. You know, I have been very quiet. In fact, I rarely ever shared my story ever, ever, ever. But I was ready to tell my story through you guys, because I had already just been through over a year of EMDR therapy. And I was like, so I was ready. And I guess this couldn't have come at a more just important time in my life, because I literally, during my therapy, I stated I would love to be able to speak my story without having to do it like, publicly with me attached to it. Like, I can tell my story freely. And I have been watching you guys for so long with your posts and all of these different women standing up, survivors, people. And I just decided, hey, I'm ready. And you were willing to listen and allow me to be a part of this. So it's been incredible just to be a part of such an amazing book of such courageous, brave, strong, and beautiful women. It has literally been a highlight for me. For all the years of suffering, I've been quietly suffering. This has been a way for me to heal, but also to be in the presence of others who have been through some things that I know that I'm not alone again, and I have support because they always say you can find support in people that you barely know versus support in support from your family. And I find truth in that. So absolutely.
Yeah, I heard two things there. One is you had already done some healing work. You did EMDR, you were ready for your next stage of healing, and telling your story and getting it all out of your system is a part of the healing journey. And so you were like, all right, I'm ready for that next step. But then also you were also ready to be public without necessarily being public. And I think this is a beautiful way to be fully transparent, to be, not worry about who was going to read it or what they were going to think, because you were in our collaboration book. You weren't just doing it on your own, but then also having accountability, right? makes things so much, you'll do way more when you know people are watching. And so all of you have said, I'm ready, I want to write a book, and doing it together made it actually happen.
Absolutely.
All right, Miss Faith, I'd love to hear a bit about your story and why you decided to say yes.
One of the big reasons that I chose to say yes was that, kind of like Kelly said earlier, so many of us have been told our story didn't matter, or even our stories were doubted. And if people put off a negativity towards us when we're trying to tell our stories, then we all want to stay silent. And I had stayed silent for far too long. And it's time for people to know that they're not alone, that even though each of our 10 chapters, our traumas are different, one thing still stays the same through all of them, and that's the hurt and the impact that we all had. But at the same time, the healing that we have because of God in our lives, it's also the same no matter what you've experienced, and that this was a wonderful opportunity to be able to begin touching lives for others and show them that, yes, no matter what you've gone through, somebody can relate to something. Even though each of our chapters were different, there was still some little part in each of the chapters that we could each relate to. The stories don't need to be identical because none of us are identical, but the trauma is still the same. The hurt is still the same, but so is the healing. And I wanted to begin to show people that that healing is possible if you'll just let yourself surrender to God's healing.
You're so right, because everybody's story is so different, but yet the effects of trauma on the body, on the soul, on the spirit, on the mind are all so similar. And so when you share your story, people go, oh, I experienced that. And they might not even connect it to the trauma, which is why I think so often when people read these stories, they go, oh, that's why I do this, or that's why this happened. And there's a lot of self-awareness that and self-discovery that one can experience as they read through their stories. But you also didn't stop there. You know, it wasn't just, none of you guys did. This is not just about the hurt. This is about the healing and the power through Christ as well, where you are able to say, all right, this isn't the end of my story. This is just a piece of something much bigger. So Kelly, what was the process like for you of actually getting it out on paper? Because you all three raised your hands quickly. And then it was most likely a little bit trickier than expected.
Yep. So I knew instantly I wanted to do it. I was all in and yep. And then you gave us a timeline for writing and the steps to take to get it ready. And I could not bring myself to write one word for about 3 months. Which I think was the deadline for turning
like 3 months.
I want to say I was supposed to start writing in around August, and I started in October.
And it was due at the end of no, it was due in October.
Due in October. Yes. So what I got was what the book got is my first draft, and thankfully Rachel was my kind editor. But it was a real struggle to get it out. I had never told anyone the full story, and this happened at this point. It's 14 years ago. And I had done a lot of healing work and on a lot of other areas of my life before that happened. And so that allowed me the space and like the brain capacity to actually walk through it and like, okay, what was the sequence of events, and actually retell it to myself, re-experience it with myself. But putting it on paper was so hard. And then once I started, then I was just like, well, shoot, it's going to be too long. And I just had to keep writing and writing and writing, but I didn't know when to stop. So it was a really big struggle, but once I had it out, it just felt like, like it was just like audible, like, I don't know, it was like a visceral body experience of, okay, that's gone now. And there was something really amazing about the process that it was like, as I was writing, it was like the movie of my life was playing in my brain, and being able to get it out now from the perspective of being a person who is in the healing process versus that really hurt little girl. And kind of being able to actually verbalize what she was feeling, but not having to re-experience it was very, it was a gift. It was a really hard gift, but it ended up being, it ended up being a kind of a present to myself.
Yeah, getting it out. But what I think people don't realize is that exact thing. You're not just writing facts. It's one thing if you're like, I broke my arm in second grade, but you are writing something that you're still so emotionally connected to, and then you're replaying it in your mind and remembering thing, and potentially even more details come up and things you had forgotten or hadn't thought about in a while. And so it can bring up a lot of gunk that has laid dormant for a while. Did you experience that?
Oh yeah. And some of it was like in a really positive way, because I was able to put feelings around the actions that I had at the time, and that I wasn't able to understand at the time, like, why was I doing this? So it's hard to explain it, but yeah, a lot of things came up. Definitely a lot of things came up. I remembered a lot of details that I had forgotten. And then I had to like fact check myself, because I'm all my internal monologue tells me that people will say I'm lying and such. So I'm having to do positive self-talk to myself at the same time, while also fact checking myself for dates and things and trying to be specific with it. But yeah, I remembered it was like I remembered years of my life that I had forgotten. And not forgotten, just chosen to not touch. But as I touched them, it was a lot less scary. It was sad. I expected it to be really scary, and instead it was just really sad.
Did you have compassion and understand your past self?
When I was writing it, a little bit, but after I read it, which I didn't read until I got the book,
we kept asking her, you guys, like, even before the book was published, did you read your chapter yet? Did you read your chapter yet? Nope.
No, I read it once I got it in person. And after I read it, yeah, that girl got a lot of tears cried for her.
Good. Well, I think that's, there's this self-judgment that happens, right? When, I should have, could have, would have done this differently. I should have, could have, would have, why, all these things. But when you look at it from the perspective of that was a little girl doing the best that she could with what she had, there's a lot of grace and compassion that hopefully is shown to her. And then you can care for her. Like we talk a lot about in inner child work, right? Like, I'm the adult now. You're safe now. You don't have to feel like live in fear. I got you. And your adult self can go back and comfort her, which she didn't have at that time, but she does now.
Yeah.
All right, CJ. So I know you had just started telling your story to people that knew you. And this was a way for you to kind of shout it from the roof, actually on TikTok too. Like you've started telling your story. How was it to go back and to put it down in writing?
It rehashed a lot of it, not so much the trauma that happened, but the responses, the anger, the resentment of me sharing and trying to be brave. But one thing that I learned after when I was in therapy, I was given permission to share my story on how I saw fit. I don't have to explain to anyone how I choose to tell my story or where I'm going to tell my story. This is my story. The trauma happened to me, not to anyone else. And I always pride myself because, starting from the tender age of 3 until about 12 years old, I lost years my innocence is gone. So being able to sit down, and of course, I didn't have a whole lot of time because I came in kind of towards the end. I literally had like 3 weeks to write, and I, like Kelly, waited till like the last couple days. I said, okay, I got to sit down and do this. But I just started writing, and then putting things in order as I saw fit. I had to get it out first. But it was so healing for me, even though I've been healing from therapy, but being able to tell the story, remembering things that happened that my brain blocked, to protect me from my earlier years, being able to put that in order and see how brave I was, and what I did to keep the situation, at bay at such a young age. I had to mature pretty quickly. So being able to write this and just know that I am no longer taking, um or blaming myself for sharing my story. If others want to join me, great. But if they don't agree with it, that's not on me. I know what happened to me, and I would never in my wildest dreams lie and make something up. This is People want to believe that I'm lying or seeking attention, but the truth is they don't know what I have dealt with and how well I have dealt with this for so long. And I applaud myself and anyone else that has been through something so traumatic to come out at the very end to be so positive and be uplifting and motivating, but to be able to share my story. I want someone to relate. I didn't have that growing up. So being able to share and have someone be like, oh my gosh, that happened to me, or I can relate to that. That's my ultimate goal. That's all I want, is for someone to relate to what I went through and to understand that it's okay to share when you're ready and to be brave, and that it's your story to tell.
Absolutely. And you're right. You had to grow up quickly and handle adult issues and emotions and confusions as a child. And so to have the chance to, with adult eyes and adult, mindset, go back and say, oh, this is what was really going on then. A child wouldn't understand. But as an adult, you can go back and put the pieces together, and it can start to make a bit more sense. Faith, I'd love to hear about your experience while getting it out of your system and putting the pieces back together.
So for me, a lot of it is I had trouble even just narrowing down which section of my life, because for me, my life was filled with various traumas throughout. So choosing which section to relate to the most was the hardest part. And then once I did finally decide what area I wanted to focus on, it was the fact that always before, whenever I had told my story, I had done it strictly factual. There was no emotion because I knew no one was going to believe me anyway. So in writing the chapter, that was the first time that I actually had an opportunity to be able to process the emotions as I was writing it down. I had words upon words, and with each draft that I would turn in, I'd be told, where's your emotion? You've got emotion over this. And so finally, then whenever I sat down and just let it pour out from my heart, the emotions behind it and the release was beyond anything I ever thought I would even remotely experience.
How important is it to reconnect with that emotion and allow it to release rather than stay stuffed?
It's highly important. It's one of the main things, because your body remembers all of that trauma. And so until you release it, I've noticed a difference in headaches and just muscle tensions, things like that, because I don't have those pent up emotions near as much as I did. Are they fully out yet? No, this was just a small step, but it was a step that needed to be taken. It was the beginning of even more healing still yet to come. But the fact that I did it and took that leap of faith, there's been a huge release. And There's not been as many flashbacks that I didn't even realize were flashbacks until I sat down and started writing out my thoughts and writing my story, because it was things that it was just normal life to me. I had been so groomed and so manipulated that I thought it was just normal part of growing up. That, as the more and more that I heal and release and go through the Stop Sis programs, as well as other healing and counseling, I realize, no, I was taken advantage of pretty much from birth on. And it's been, just putting all of those pieces together and making it click that, no, I'm not crazy. This was my life. It was traumatic, and I have every reason to be upset about it, but yet it's still time to grow and heal and move on and be the best person that God wants me to be.
I think that's one thing that really struck me about your guys' chapters and the 10 chapters altogether. There was no pity. Please pity me. Please, woe is me. Listen to my story. And it wasn't that. Like, you guys told your story in an empowering, like, this is my truth. This is what happened. And this is where God has me now. Like, take it, leave it. I don't care. I don't need your pity. I don't need any of that. This is it. And I pray that it does good for people, but I love that there wasn't this woe was me part, like pity party within the midst. It was your truth, and it was powerful.
It's important, Faith, that you mentioned that it's a part of the process to connect emotionally to the story, and it's okay to be mad about it. Like, at some point, you get to mama bear yourself and go, heck to the no.
Oh yeah.
You can do that little snap thing that we're trying to learn over here, to say, yeah, CJ, you got it. You got to teach me this skill. But like, heck no, like, this is not okay, and this should not happen to me or anyone else. But again, we don't stay there. We move through that anger piece, but that anger piece is a part of the process, I would say.
Yeah.
Now, we just went to an event. We got to go, we speak all around. So if you're interested in having Rachel and I come share, we talk about trauma and trafficking, and Rachel shares her story, but we also speak about the power of the healing journey. In this last event, we got to kind of launch when we speak, and we had it for sale there, and we got to put it on the big screen and say, 10 survivors bravely shared their stories. And Faith, you got to be a part of that. And I have to tell you, from my perspective, you can let me know what it was for you, but I felt like you were beaming. Like, I felt like you were so proud to be a part of this book, that you were so proud to have shared your story. Like, you looked to me like you were like, that's me. Now, I don't know if you felt that way, and I'd like to get like, what is your side? But I was really excited for you in this process, because I felt like you were really proud of what you've experienced, and how you've been healing.
Yeah, I've been silenced for far too long. And the fact that, yes, we're getting to speak our stories. And I helped at the event. I got to help work at the merchandise table and help with some of the book sales for a little while. And to see the support of the people coming up and purchasing the book. And, I can't wait to dive into the book, even though it may be hard. I want to hear your stories, and to be able to let them know, yes, those that wrote the book, that's what we want from you. And I don't want to say I was prideful by any means, because it wasn't pride, but it was great satisfaction that, I could stand there at times and say, one of those chapters is mine. I'm healing because of Stop Sis. I'm healing because of this book and the stories and the power and the release. There is healing, and there's healing for everyone.
Mic drop. I mean, really. Yeah. And I think that is so, like, that's why we did it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Was to give you and Kelly and CJ, all three of you, and all 10 of the authors, a space to go, this is my truth, and this is me on the healing journey. So I'm so glad you got to be a part of it.
It was very rewarding.
Well, and now
if
we're
any
like,
of the others ever get the chance, I would highly recommend, going to the events in person. It's one thing to hear the stories. It's another thing to be in the presence and have everyone thinking and feeling, different things, but yet still knowing that it's a place to tell our stories. It's a place for that healing. It's unified support and love and empower. You could feel the power in that room.
yeah, rewarding is a good word.
Yes.
That's how it felt. Yeah, that was really special. All right. So Kelly, you guys have mentioned, all three of you have mentioned this a little bit, but you're going to have a whole gamut of people read the story. Some are going to be people who want to learn and understand how things like this happen, and they want to learn how to protect their own children, or maybe they have trauma in their past and they're wanting to figure out what the healing journey looks like for them. I know you've had family and friends start to read your story. I'd love for you to have a chance to share what you want readers to get from your experience.
First, I have to say, ladies, thank you for saying the things I've been trying to say, but my brain prevents me from saying, because yes, about the processing and it's my story to tell. No one else gets to have a say in it. I love you both. Thank you. Okay, and the question, Denise, was what I want people to get out of reading it? Like people I know or just people?
Either or.
Hmm.
Or both. Maybe whatever's coming up for you. Let's start with somebody who doesn't know you at all, but they are somebody who's a trauma survivor themselves. What do you want them to see and experience?
Just to realize that one portion of your life does not equal your entire identity as a person. And what has happened does not define who you are going to be in the future, and that all of the negative and all of the lies that we internalize because of the pain and because of the trauma, that they are lies, that they're not true, and that there's hope and freedom in healing, and that it is this amazing really truly amazing process that it hurts and is painful, but healing is so just I don't know, so worth it, I guess.
Yeah,
it's so worth all of the pain.
Well, and I think somebody who's in the trenches doesn't necessarily know that. And so for you to be able to say, I've been in the trenches too, and I'm now taking steps, not that we're all ever on the other side and we're like done, right? Nobody's ever quite done, but yet we're healing and we were 3 steps ahead, and it's worth the process.
And I would say, Kelly, like for your chapter in particular, some of the things that you give light to is a world that a lot of people have no idea like what it looks like, the way that it exists and the way that the interactions are and what it's like for the individual who is the victim in that. Like they don't get it. And to be able, they're able to almost live it in a sense through you to understand. And I really think from your chapter, not only will it give a voice to those who have been in it, but I'm hoping it will give compassion for other people to be able to give that compassion to people who have been in that spot that you've been in, because you explained it so well.
I really hope that is the case. And I hope that also that people are able to look at that, learn from it, but also ask with like an open heart for truly understanding what happened before that in order for someone to get to that place. Because it's not in a vacuum, like my story was, I wasn't a young girl in mine. I was a little bit older, but the person experiencing all of that was my 8-year-old Kelly, my 15-year-old Kelly. It wasn't an adult. It was all of the hurt that had happened in childhood, because there are things that happen to all of us that you don't even realize is that we internalize and just keep inside, and it can blow up in different ways and look different in different people's lives with negative coping skills. But I took it to a different level. But I do hope that people will really question with compassion and with true empathy in order to understand and in order to learn how to love people better.
Yeah. We talk about this a lot in Stop Sis, but often when the trauma happens, that's where we're kind of emotionally stunted. And so if your first trauma was at age 8, when life happens, when an upset happens, when emotion happens, the coping skills revert back to that like age 8. So even as an adult, you were triggered in these dysfunctional, abusive relationships and coping and acting like your 8-year-old self. And so I think your story absolutely gives light to a whole industry that people don't understand, and recognizing that it's not, even if it's seemingly a choice, it's not a choice because of all the baggage and hard stuff and situations and life that happened before it. All right, CJ, what about you? What do you want readers to glean from your story?
I want them to take away that, especially parents with young daughters, I want them to see signs. I want them to be able to understand what to look for in your child to maybe be more aware of what's going on. Because what happened to me, it was hard to be, it's hard to talk about. And it was kind of just, I was very quiet about it. But I want someone to understand that it's okay to not be okay. I want them to know that what you've been through is just a part. It's hard, and it's okay to share in the way that you see fit, but to know that you're not alone. Because for years, and I mean for years, I have felt so alone. But when I found people like me who had trichotillomania and abuse response mechanisms, I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt like I had something in common. I had someone that understood. I want someone to be able to feel compassion for that little girl who went through all of these things for decades and then was quiet for 30 years. Like, I want them to know that you don't have to stay silent. You can speak up. You don't have to be scared. It's okay to be scared, but it's not okay to sacrifice your well-being just to appease someone else. So, but I just, my hope is that they see that just because all of us have been through extreme trauma, we all have recognized that dark place that we've been in, and we recognized that we needed to heal, and we made that happen. We took the steps that was needed to become a better version of ourselves, to be a better mother, a better daughter, a better friend, a better wife, for everyone involved. But in anyone's case, I just want them to see that it happened to me, yes, but I'm okay. Do I still have lots to learn? Yes, I do. But I want them to know that in this journey of life, there are so many people that have a story, and you may not know that they're probably they live next door to you. You just don't know what somebody's been through. And I just want them to to know that we are all very normal, loving, kind people that had a tragic thing happen, but we all are strong and brave. And those two that haven't been able to get to that space, that place where they feel comfortable sharing, that will come in time. And that's what I hope is more people come forward, become more brave to share their side, and not feel scared for what others are going to think about them. But that's what I hope and pray for.
You're breaking chains, girl.
Yes, breaking generational curses. Yes, ma'am.
Mhm. Yes, it's so true. When we speak, right? When we heal, chains break. And all of you are shifting the next generation to come because of the healing work that you're doing. All right, Faith, what do you have to share? What would you like a little girl or a mom or someone who's reading this after they read your story? What would you like them to take away?
Well, one of the first things that I want any reader, whether child, adult, whatever, is when you see red flags, go ahead and say something. Don't let those children or even adults slip through the cracks. There's far too many cases out there where people they're suffering in silence because nobody is taking a stand for them. Had somebody come and been at my defense when I was younger, I don't know how well my life would have been changed differently. But one thing I do know is that with God, all things are worked together for the good. So my story was still what it was for a reason. God knows that purpose. The purpose now is to glorify him through the struggles. But anytime there's red flags, especially multiple red flags, take a stand. Even if you're standing alone, take a stand.
Yeah.
You could be changing a life forever.
Well, there's that whole, see something, say something. If something seems out of norm, if something doesn't seem right, it's probably not right. And so ask questions. I think so often we're like, oh, I don't want to impose or whatever. But if somebody had imposed, Faith, your 1% shift could have been in a completely different direction.
Yeah. And then
I was just going to say, like, what you see, those little red flags, like Denise has taught me, it's just literally the tip of the iceberg you're seeing. There's a whole other piece of the story that we don't get to see. So that little red flag is a little cry for help. And yes, I wish your red flags people, I know they saw them. I wish they would have taken action.
And then to the survivors themselves that are reading the chapters, I want them to know that it's okay to continue to heal. You're not alone. There are people that do believe you. Take that small step. It may seem scary at first, but it'll be worth it in the end whenever you can feel that release and the healing coming and those chains breaking.
What I so appreciate what you said, Faith, is like the healing process impacts you physically. And oftentimes we don't connect the two, right? We're like, oh, I'm tired, I have headaches, I get sick a lot, or, all the whatever it is. But as you heal, everything starts to shift. And so things that you might not deem connected certainly could be, right? So as we release those emotional strings, as we gain that inner strength, everything starts to change. Awesome.
Man.
Well, thank you, ladies, for saying yes to the chapter, for finishing it. Not everybody did. Just know that that's a big deal to actually end up in the book. And if you're listening, one way that you could support the survivors who bravely shared their stories is, number one, purchasing it on Amazon. We'll have the link below. But number two, leave them a review. It's like putting your heart on a platter, and to have other people validate and say, we believe you, we love you, we support you, and I've had similar experiences. That's why they do the hard thing, certainly to heal themselves. But more importantly, they want to spread awareness, and they want to spread hope that healing is possible. So give them feedback. They need to hear from you. And so certainly post on our social medias, all the comments, all the things, but go to Amazon and leave a review specifically about the book and how it's impacted you. They and all of us would greatly appreciate it. Rachel, is there anything you want to add before we end tonight?
It's really interesting to me because we'll share more later, but we had the opportunity to share at a pregnancy care center a few days ago. And one of the things the workers there were talking to us about was, how do we get these girls to speak out? And I'm just sitting here thinking, man, having one of these books in the waiting room, or, where they just simply see this person spoke out and look at them now, maybe it will be okay. I mean, I could see your books everywhere, but when I don't know, that thought came to my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so if you're listening and you are suffering in silence, please speak out. You email us. All the links are in the description. Let us know. We'll schedule a call with you and support you on this process, and potentially a Stop Sis program can support you on your healing journey too. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. We super appreciate your story, your heart, and just know that your story matters, because it is not only you're breaking chains yourself by continuing to heal and move forward, but you're really creating a space for others to speak their truth and break their own chains too. So thank you guys so much for being here. Leave, like, comment, subscribe, all the things. We appreciate connecting with you each week, and we'll see you next week in the next video. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this powerful episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. If you are interested in booking Rachel to speak at your school, your church, or on your podcast, then please email openblindeyes@protonmail.com. If you are interested in sponsoring a survivor on their healing journey and would like to donate to Stop Sis, then please check out the link in the description box or show notes below, or you can email stopsis@protonmail.com. And finally, if you are currently suffering in silence, or you know somebody who is, whether they're dealing with a current trauma or one from the past, then we will always recommend that you reach out to your local resources and find a counselor that you can trust, because nobody is meant to suffer alone. Have an amazing week, and thank you for being here.